Being human, living everyday life. Do our thoughts, words, actions, and feelings impact our everyday life? You bet they do. Don't believe me? Start being aware of every word, thought, action, and feelings that you have. Notice how they make you feel and think and how it impacts the world around you. You heard it said, like attracts like, or misery loves company. These are very real influences in our lives, and I have always and will always say, be aware and responsible for every thought, word, and action you have. Watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. Very wise words from Lao Tzu, a legendary Taoist philosopher. On this episode of Healing from Within with Tony Valen, I've invited Israel Bouseman to share his 25 years experience in Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, energy healing, astrology, and the intuitive practices. He's here to share about what he's learned and to give us a brief overview of his book, Only Human, an operating manual for seekers and sensitives, a book written in modules to guide everyone on how to live a happy, productive, and positive life without negativity, illness, and depression. Next on Healing from Within with Tony Valen. Hi, I'm Tony Valen. Welcome.
From within.
Welcome to Healing from Within with Tony Valen. On today's show, I have Israel Bouseman. He is a lifetime student of the mysteries with a love for finding interconnections between different spiritual perspectives and practices. He has 25 plus years of experience in Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, energy healing, astrology, intuitive practices such as tarot, numerology, and mind-body medicine. He's also written a book, Only Human. We'll be talking about different subjects, but we definitely want to talk about his book. So now all I have to say is welcome, Israel, to the show.
Thank you so much, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here with you, man.
All right, cool. So the first question I want to ask you is one that I always ask all my guests, which is, how did your journey begin? How did you become who you are, and how did your journey begin?
That's a beautiful question. I have my father to thank for so much of it. My father was a deeply spiritual man, and at the same time, a man of deep intellect and a lover of story. So when my brother and I were young, he raised us on Native American myths that paid homage to our Cherokee ancestors, Greek myths, Norse myths, stories from different Native American people from around the globe. And also with biblical tales. So I grew up hearing all of these different perspectives, the more scientific, the more tribal, the more biblical, these perspectives from different cultures. And it felt to me like there was validity. There was some real to all of it, but they were coming at it from such different perspectives that it was hard for a person in one perspective to understand the other. So I got to see all of these different cultural views like different flashlights in the same dark room. Now, my father was also a big sci-fi buff, and I remember reading a quote from Arthur C. Clarke. I was probably 6 years old when I first ran across this, and I'll paraphrase, probably, any technology that is sufficiently advanced will be indistinguishable from magic, right? So I hear about these tales of magic, in different myths. I hear about accounts of miracles, and I came to the conclusion at a really young age that there's something here, that there's a deeper way that humans can connect with the world, and there are deeper aspects to our potential than we normally recognize, So I started a quest, basically, of seeking out every different perspective that I could. my father would often take us to new age bookstores and crystal shops and things like that. And I remember when I was 9, I first encountered a book called You the Healer. And this was by Jose Silva. And it taught the Silva method, which is a breath and visualization method of slowing into a meditative state and then using visualization and intention to heal or to access different abilities of the mind, or to just basically work a little bit more closely with the inner world. Around the same time, I also encountered a book called Kundalini and the Chakras. So I immediately started using this meditation and this inner work to move energy, to get familiar with the human energy system and start to work with it in ways that could benefit my quality of life. And there was so many other bits along the way. When I was about around 11, I ran into my first Reiki teacher, and she was at that same New Age bookstore where a couple of years earlier I'd gotten those books, and she'd offered me my first attunement. So at the tender age of 11, I started to be formally introduced to the process of healing. Around the same time, at the Renaissance Festival, actually, I encountered my first teacher in astrology, alchemy, and even thaumaturgy. They were an alchemist traveling the Renaissance Festival circuit, and they had a shop full of different magical talismans. So since magic was my one curiosity, the one thing that I was trying to learn from all these various sources, I came in and I said, okay, so is it real magic? How does it work? How did you make this? And then I started asking about this symbol and that, and I got an introduction, like a 101 for astrology, for the Viking runes, for aspects of alchemy and how you would create an artifact that has a particular vibration or intention connected with it. And this is actually a good parallel. So I would run into this teacher once a year whenever the Renaissance Festival would come around. So that first year I had this whole list of questions, then went away, and I would ask everyone I could their birthday. And then I would just observe, pay attention, let the themes kind of come to the surface. And I spent 8 years doing this, and eventually traveled with the Renaissance Festival for a little while, working with this individual, learning the fine details of astrology and alchemy and things like that. So that's a little introduction. There's other elements in there: martial arts, Zen, Toltec wisdom, Tantra, theta healing. I got my first tarot deck when I was 16, and that was about 25 years ago now, and got an introduction about the numerology and elements and the journey of the soul, which is the major arcana laid out. So along the way, I've basically drawn from everything I could and put it together into a very clear and very human package that I can then share with others.
Understood. Great. So I was just going to go ahead and get into your book, and I hope you don't mind that I may interrupt you, because if you use a term or something that I feel like people may not know what it is, I'm going to ask you to let people know, because some of the listeners, viewers that I have are people that are just getting into this and they don't really know all the terms. So your book, Only Human, an operating manual for seekers and sensitives. Who is this book for?
So, okay. There are some people who are empaths, energetic sensitives, and they perceive the world a little bit more subtly and intensely than most. So this book is written for energetic sensitives and empaths, for those who pick up emotions, pick up thoughts, pick up energies from the world around them, and have to figure out some way to deal with that. Because for the most part, if you are naturally attuned to this subtle layer of the world, then a lot of times we get guidance through spiritual channels, so we might get into this religion or that. We might study Taoism, we might study any manner of things offered by the New Age. And the challenge that I find with that is there is too much story embedded in it. It's conceptual. It takes it away from our lived experience. So then suddenly we're taking all of the feedback from our subtle senses, and we're trying to fit it into this spiritual story or this religious perspective. And it can create a lot of challenges for us.
Gotcha.
So,
So what you're saying is that sometimes intuitive people, if they're not trained properly to look within, they end up talking about feel their own feelings instead of what they're getting intuitively.
well, that can definitely happen. Absolutely. Um, so I'll draw from a bit of personal experience here in terms of my mother, right? So I was blessed in a way because I'm a very strong empath, very strong intuitive, but I was aware of what I was picking up from a young age. So my mother was not really so aware of what she was picking up. You know, she's also extremely strong in this level. And one of the parts of her journey was to go through fear. You know, she had a Bible Belt upbringing, and a lot of these subtle bits that were coming in, they came in and she didn't know where they were coming from. So it felt like maybe that was an attack, or maybe there was demonic influence. The subtle senses were interpreted in the religious channels, and that made her shut down, made her try to shut off the gifts in order to protect herself. So this is one of the big things that I would like to bring to people, is that these subtle senses, this is a part of every human being's experience. And we don't need to be afraid of them, but we do need to be able to understand them in lived terms rather than in just the terms of the story. Otherwise, it can kind of lead us out on a limb. So I don't know if that actually answered what you were asking there.
Yeah, it did basically because what I got from, and you tell me if I understood correctly, that when you were talking about getting intuitive thoughts or feelings and picking up on other people's energy, that and you're trying to work as a reader, you have to be very careful of taking the message you're getting and not trying to tell a story from your own thoughts and your own experiences. Did I get that right or no?
Yes, I think that's a really important subject for a reader in particular. What I'm really trying to bring to the table with this book is um, basically a way for empaths to be able to handle the challenges of their gift, emotions bowling them over, challenges interacting with groups because we don't know where to fix our little energetic antenna, don't know where to take our cue. Um, so distinguishing between solid intuitive hits and internal distortion, that is an art in itself. And that's not really what I wrote this book for. I wrote this book to help humans understand how to deal with the things that humans have to deal with, you know? So part of that for empaths is learning how to actually process the feelings that come up. Empaths have to be good at three things: boundaries, communication, and emotional processing, right? So that's a big part of what I'm really trying to share in this, is a clearer view of the inner world so that we can interact with it more directly and more effectively given the needs of our moment.
Gotcha.
Um, and one of the challenges that I'm having in really sharing this right now is that the book is written for two different audiences. So you have the empaths, and the empaths are getting these subtle, intuitive, emotional bits. And I wrote the book for them so that they could get some clarity in this inner space and understand a little bit better what they're dealing with and shift from the challenge into some of the blessings of this gift. Now, I wrote it for seekers as well, because as you heard about the beginning of my journey, I have been a seeker. You know, I have explored all the different religions I could, all the different spiritual perspectives, and there's something of value in every single one of them. But it's so hard for people to actually convey this value and get on the same page when one person is speaking from one story and another person is speaking from the other. So what I did with this book is to take all of that value that I found from these different sources and put it into one single story that we all share, which is the story of the human body and the human experience.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yes. Well, I'm glad you tied it in together like that. I mean, it clearly says a manual for seekers and sensitives. So you did write it for, I guess, well, for everyone. That's basically what you did. So within your book, you talk about shadow work. What is, and I've heard that before, but I'll be honest with you, I have no clue what that means. What is shadow work?
Okay, that so there's a really magical concept, and that is that the outer world, the thing that we experience, the things that we can see and touch, the kind of situations we come to in life, reflect the inner world. So a really beautiful example of this is, say an individual judges themselves and they feel like they don't deserve success, or they feel like they're not good enough. Well, they might work really, really hard in the outer world to try to achieve that success, or, prove their worth. But they will find a lot of times that the situations in the outer world keep falling short. So if we carry a story, say in this instance, of our lack of worth, then regardless of how much conscious effort we try to address that, the situations that we find in the outer world are going to reflect that story. So the subconscious mind is incredibly powerful. We have stories, we have emotions, all of that is suppressed into the subconscious, not available to view in the conscious mind. We can't really touch it. Well, we can't see it. And it calls the shots from behind the curtain. So shadow work is kind of an around the corner way of thinking. It looks at the world like a diagnostic mirror. It says, okay, I know that I can't see what I'm unconscious of. But if I look at the themes that happen to me in the world, if I look at the cycles of experience, or the repeated patterns, then I can identify that I've got something inside that is linked to that pattern in the outer world. And we then have the opportunity to create a little space and zero in, and this often comes through the feeling. This feeling that outer world situation has is connected with a feeling that I'm carrying inside. So instead of trying to push harder, work even more, you can take a step back, tune into what's going on inside, and let it speak to you. And a lot of times these old bits of charge, these old bits of fear or anger, and the stories that we have connected with them, they'll come up. They'll come into our consciousness, into our awareness, where we have the opportunity to hold space, to release that old stuck charge, and to renegotiate our stories. So simple answer, shadow work is a way of adjusting the inner world so that you can have a different experience in the outer world. And it's a way of viewing the outer world, so it will give you insight to the sometimes murky things that are happening within.
Gotcha. Beautiful. Can you tell us the link between manifestation and karma?
Okay. All right. This is one that I really like to talk about, because there's a lot of focus amongst New Age people on manifesting the life that you want, manifesting this goal, this outer world situation. And that's based in the law of resonance. And it's connected to what we were just talking about. If I'm holding a particular feeling inside, then it's more likely that I'm going to find situations in the outer world that reflect that. Like if I'm feeling frustrated and off, then it's really likely I'm going to create a new situation unintentionally that makes me feel frustrated, right? So there's a lot of LOA, law of attraction talk, that is about trying to focus, envision on the thing that you want. And I find that that's usually a waste of energy. What we can do instead is to focus on the things that we have within that are causing us unintentionally and unconsciously to create situations that we don't want. So you asked about karma, and a lot of times in the West, karma is kind of seen as consequence. What you sow, you will reap, but in the East, it's actually looked at as a series of grooves in our perception. So a series of expectations or stories or old feelings that make us more likely to encounter certain situations. So it's that same law of resonance that's going on here. Karma in the East is what we would call unconscious emotion and story. And this unconscious emotion and story basically attunes us to the same kinds of experiences in the outer world. So clearing karma is a way of processing our subconscious story and emotion so that we no longer unconsciously create situations that we don't want in the outer world, or situations that we are ready to grow from, ready to learn the lessons so that we don't have to be confronted by the experience again and again, So to put it simply, the law of attraction is not a superpower. It is just a feature of human existence. What you carry within attunes you to certain types of experiences in the outer world. Karma is a collection of unconscious attunements that we carry that are all a lesson. Every single bit of distortion, every single unconscious influence that we have that pushes us, say the example of the person believing that they lack worth, right? That is a bit of karma, a bit of unconscious story and emotional content. And they will find situations again and again in the outer world that reflect that until there's a breaking point, until they have the opportunity to actually become conscious of those stories and hold space to clear them. And then suddenly we attract something different. So has that offered a clear link there for you?
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is that in the East, it's more about you become who you think you are, because you attract those certain experiences or the type of people, whatever. So so who you are on the inside is what you're going to attract on the outside. But in the West, karma is more like a you reap what you sow, just like you said. Am I correct in that?
Yeah. Yeah, when you look at the deeper like yogic texts and the Buddhist texts, you see karma as samskaras. Samskaras are imprints, imprints in the perception, in the experience. So two people can look at a situation and one person can interpret it one way and the other person can interpret it the other way. Each of us interprets the things around us in the way that we're primed to do so. So the samskaras are like this walnut grooving of ways that we're primed to perceive and respond. So karma in this perspective is not like you do something bad and you get a bad result. It's the perception that leads us into engaging with the world in a certain way. And the way that we engage with the world evokes a kind of result that is in line with the vibration that we take to it.
Gotcha. Now you said that it only breaks free when you become conscious of it, but that sounds easier said than done. I mean, how does someone wake up to the reality of, wait a minute, I'm living a world that I'm creating because that's the way I think, so that's where I go. How do they break that to become better?
So what I have found thus far is that it's a lifelong process. So my own personal approach, I go back and forth between celebration and shadow work. So what that looks like is I make my baseline an appreciation of this one moment, the blessings that I receive right now, and I try to rest in a place of gratitude. But then sometimes things will trigger me. So that's when it's an opportunity not to try to push the feeling away or try to change something in the outer world to make the trigger or make the emotion go away, but it's an opportunity to stop, get still, and listen to what's coming up. So every time you get triggered, you have something coming up from the unconscious. So you have an opportunity to actually see it, engage with it, and hold space for that emotion to process in its own time and way. So it happens little bits at a time where every single trigger, something more pops up. You have the opportunity to clear it. You have the opportunity to see the stories around it and ask yourself if you would look at that story in a different way, renegotiate the story by bringing a different perspective. So one little bit at a time, every little thing that comes up into our awareness, we can clear it when it does. And slowly, slowly, we'll find that we have more energy to bring to bear to create what we want instead of just handling the triggers that come up. So although it is a lifelong process, there are like layers. So after you make it a habit to pay attention to the emotions that come up and clear them as they do, you'll find that you'll have less of those times when you're just in a funk and you don't know what's going on. You'll have cultivated more awareness around the inner world. And then later on, you'll find another shift where the things that you experience in the outer world don't trigger you in the same way that they did. And you'll still have the triggers come up with deeper stories, deeper layers of charge. But as you go on, you get more and more clear space to rest in celebration, to create, and less time required to clear up this collection of old garbage that we've been stuffing down.
Gotcha. Interesting. So that leads me to my next question. It has to do with the subconscious mind, which is, you and I both know, a very powerful thing. How can we work with our subconscious mind to get to this clearing?
Beautiful. So I'll share with you probably one of my first lessons. I shared that I encountered the book You the Healer by Jose Silva. Now, what Silva did was kind of cool, actually. He was working when we had just brought out the EEG, that monitored the electrical activity of the brain. And what he did was look at the brain waves of longtime meditators and yogis and Zen monks, right? And we were also working with biofeedback at that time. So what he did was find a way that an individual, Westerners, without this kind of training, could very quickly adjust their mindset, adjust their brain waves to reflect the same thing that was happening in these 30-year meditators. So what they'd found in this time was that in meditation, the brain enters something that they called the alpha rhythm. And this is a bit slower than our normal waking consciousness. Our normal waking consciousness is very fast, lots of peaks, but different parts of the brain doing their own thing. And then as soon as we slow down, then the peaks of the electrical activity get higher while the frequency gets lower. So the brain is not firing as quickly, but more parts are firing at once. So the really beautiful thing about this is that when this happens with our brain, our inner experience starts to bring the conscious and the subconscious closer together. So at 4 to 8 hertz, 4 to 8 cycles per second, this is called the alpha rhythm. And it's really easy to breathe and slow ourselves into that state. It's what happens naturally as soon as you get still, slow down, and then you'll start to notice things that you didn't before. So maybe as soon as you slow down, you'll realize that maybe your body's a little bit misaligned, or you'll notice a feeling that was coming up, or you'll remember something that, that had been on your mind, but just hadn't come to mind, right? So immediately, as soon as you slow down, you start to become more conscious of the things that you were blocking out. It's amazing actually how this works. So the next bit that that Silva shared with that is that when you slow down, then the conscious mind can visualize something and it has a stronger effect on the function of the body. So this is because the conscious mind often thinks in terms of language, but the subconscious mind is more symbolic. It thinks in gestalt, it thinks in symbol. So when we slow down, we bring the functions of the conscious and the subconscious closer together, and then we can envision something, and it's sending a message back to the subconscious in a language that it can understand. So this is something that can be used for supporting the body's healing or immune function. It can be used to improve memory, improve cognitive ability. It can be used basically in any way you imagine, because it's just slowing down and getting to the point where what the conscious mind says can be heard more easily by the subconscious. Now, if you slow it even further than that, that can take you into a bit of journey state, and you can do so much more with the subconscious there.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, is this something that I know certain people, or at least they talk about it? To be quite honest with you, I haven't met anybody that they heal themselves, that whenever you have a certain pain, or, I mean, some people that claim that they've even cured cancer. So is this what you're talking about? We're using that slowing down and training the subconscious mind to heal your body?
Absolutely. So it's been a journey for me actually coming to recognize these things as possible and real, like, because you hear these fantastical stories of healing or of directing the body to grow in certain ways, and until you do it yourself, until you've experienced it, that's just another fantastic story, right? So there were a number of personal examples that I had growing up. I remember one that it stood out to me. So I believe I had a wart on my foot or something like that. My father had seen it. This was probably when I was about 15, So he saw and he said, okay, we're going to have to go to the doctor, get that taken care of. I was like, Pop, give me a month, 1 month, right? So I went into meditation each day of that month, and I slowed down, went into an alpha rhythm where my subconscious, the part that tells my body how to grow, was closer to my conscious. And I envisioned this area of my body and envisioned a new template, like the template of perfect health, replacing the template of the wart that was growing there, right? And within a month, it was gone. And I had a beautiful little story to share with people about like the efficacy of these things, right? Now, I've also used this for a number of other things. When my wisdom teeth were coming in, this is another great example. There wasn't enough room in the jaw. So knowing that I could work with it like this, I went into meditation while this was happening and expanded, viewed the area of the jaw expanding, and all of the pressure that came in from the wisdom teeth trying to fit into too small a space, that was eased. You can actually use this to one of the simplest ways that I should share this more. I don't get headaches anymore. And it's because of this, because of what we're talking about. It starts with awareness. When you notice that little ache coming in, instead of tensing to it, relax, slow down, and feel/envision that space as it releases. Anytime I get sick, anytime I get hurt, I'm spending a good bit of that time in meditation to support my body's immune function, or to support the regeneration of the cells, to help my body once again find that healthy template. And as a result, I'm in amazing health and look probably 20 years younger than I actually am.
Gotcha. So I want to ask you, is this something that can be done in a group setting? Like, for example, like you as a leader to teach people this? I mean, if instead of, sort of like going to the doctor, instead of going to the doctor, you start going to meditation and people like you to teach this method. Do you think it's effective as in a group, group setting?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, when working on this level with a person who has a good bit of experience, the group setting is going to give you faster results for all the people there, faster and more intense results than you would get if a person was learning this on their own. So let me use theta healing as an example. Theta healing is a form of focused prayer and intention, where you link fields with another individual and encourage, so inspire a new healthy template, or it can be used for many different things. So when you have one person who is teaching a group, they actually hold a frequency. They hold that slower frequency, and it's easier for those people who are there learning in the group to reach that same frequency. Now, I teach this as well. Like I teach people to teach themselves how to do this. And this part is very challenging. It's simple, but it's not easy. So if I was to guide someone to teach themselves how to enter this space, I would say, lay down and relax with each exhalation and count down from 100 to 0. And you're probably going to fall asleep. So try it again the next day, and again the next day. And each day you get a little bit better at maintaining remaining alert while you slow and relax the body. So this is how I would teach someone if I wasn't there in person to help them into that space. But a guided meditation in the group form is really, really helpful for helping the person to familiarize themselves with that inner space. And as soon as you felt it, it's much easier to return there.
I agree with you. Now, this is all covered in your book, right? The Only Human?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In fact, because this was the first lesson that I received, like the first hardcore inner work lesson, it's the first module that I share in my book. So I've divided my book into 7 different modules, and each one is connected to a particular chakra, which is an energy center, and a particular domain of human experience. So the very first module, we look at rhythm, and there's a 3-part rhythm of our body: our breath, our heartbeat, and our brainwave, and they're all linked together. So as soon as we slow the breathing, we slow the heart rate, and we slow the brain activity. And I use that, I share that first because it gives us an opportunity to go into the meditative state, which allows us to engage more directly with the subconscious. So I kind of feel like that's the first of everything, really.
Right. Well, your book has so much in it. I mean, to try to talk about the whole book and everything in one interview, I don't think we could do it. But for those that want to look for your book, where can people get your book?
Well, it is currently available on Amazon and basically all across the world, available in Kindle, paperback, and hardcover. Um, that's really the only place that I have it as of yet. So it will be available in other places moving forward, but right now that's where you have to go.
Gotcha. And if people wanted more information on you or to get a hold of you, how can they? What information can you share?
I have a lot of short pieces on Facebook. I am the only Israel Bouseman, so it's kind of convenient. It'll be easy to find me. And I also have a website, which is onlyhumanwisdom.com. So you're welcome to reach out through any of those channels.
Wonderful. Well, Israel, thank you so much for being on the show. And like I said, I will probably invite you back for yet another interview because there's so much to cover. And I feel like we just scratched the surface.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I feel like we can have a lot of good conversations, and I look forward to it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Quite welcome, man. Thank you for having me.